Welcome and bienvenidos to Cultural Capacity, a podcast sponsored by Educator Aide Incorporated, where our team is committed to supporting individuals and organizations on their journey of self-aware leadership, emotional wellness, and development of effective cross-cultural communications. Let's get ready to explore the following topics together by biting into them with little pieces that go really deep to examine ourselves. Topics like bias, culture, cultural psychology, cultural neuroscience, diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial equity. Our episodes are all 10 minutes or less and intended to serve as introspective tools for you as the individual leader or the teams that you're leading. Be sure to check out the links in the podcast description where you can sign up for our free quarterly subscription, Better Community, as well as tap in and submit your questions via the voice message button. Let's get ready to learn together. All right, so you may be wondering, why is this podcast called Cultural Capacity? So first off, you have heard my voice on these episodes thus far. My name is Justine Gonzalez, and I'm the founder of Educator Aide Incorporated, also the author of the text, The Social Capital Quotient, which you can purchase on all major bookstores, independent bookstores as well, including Amazon online. All right, let's hop in though and answer this question. Why is your podcast called Cultural Capacity? So, first, let me start with a little bit of background information about myself. I grew up in the Midwest, northern Indiana to be exact, actually pretty close to Notre Dame University. So, I am a Notre Dame football fan. Um, but my father's Puerto Rican and my mother has an Amish and Mennonite background. That is right. I am a third culture kid. Grew up hearing Spanish spoken, some by my grandparents, some by my dad, but not so much in our actual, like my nuclear family, the home that I grew up in majority of the time. I have one older sister, one younger brother. And then on my mom's side, my grandparents actually spoke Dutch, and I was used to hearing things like Velege, Hoktihana. Both of those mean let's go or sit down. Yeah, you can tell what kind of a kid I was. I needed some reminders. So, anyways, wanted to give you all just a little quick fun facts to get to know more about me. But one of the reasons in my by trade, I actually started teaching in the classroom at age 21. As far as elementary school teaching, I was part of some of the first turnaround efforts of schools in Indianapolis public schools, went on to get into a principal residency training program, a national program that was founded at Harvard called New Leaders, originally called New Leaders for New Schools. And I was placed in Chicago Public Schools Turnaround Network at the time. After that, launched and founded two small high schools in Indiana, focused on youth that had dropped out or were had been incarcerated or had unforeseen circumstances where their traditional school setting was not working. So my last position that I held prior to founding Educator Aide Incorporated was a superintendent of 10 small high schools across the northern part of Indiana. So, a little bit of background information about me. I love to travel, I love coffee. And I love to listen to music and play music as well. For a bit of you who are creative, I think tapping into our creativity is one of the kindest things we can do to continually ignite innovation in our unique leadership roles. Whether you find yourself in corporate America as a leader, whether you find yourself leading a nonprofit, or leading schools, no matter where you find yourself in this moment as you listen to this podcast, leadership is such a huge concept, and especially leading efforts specifically focused on racial equity, focused on all right, pardon the interruption. I actually had a knock at my door while recording. But I was saying all that to say, back to our question of this episode, why is this podcast named Cultural Capacity? I have worked in the space of cultural competency training for over a decade now. My PhD body of research is devoted to understanding the nuances of cross-cultural communications, their impact on leaders and your leadership efforts, as well as examining cultural empathy and how we better develop that cultural mindset for building our empathy muscles with those who might believe differently than us. Perhaps they have different norms or different values than we do. But how do we actually have that compassionate curiosity to really want to learn about people who are different than ourselves? And so when I started thinking about how do we continuously keep equity at the forefront? How do we continuously keep anti racism efforts at the forefront? And it's really through small shifts every day of building your own awareness. And on any given day, my capacity for leading culturally might not be at level 100. Some days it might not be there. Other days it might be. And I like this idea of capacity because there isn't this set number. There isn't this set, it's a sliding scale always, similar to our emotional health, similar to grief, right? When somebody you love dearly passes on to the next life and they leave their earthly body, right? We have grieving periods. And it can be really, really challenging times, sometimes for months or years. And the reality is, we never return to maybe how life previously existed prior to that person's death. But we learn how to navigate otherwise and create new ways to find joy, new ways of being, new ways of understanding ourselves and showing up, new ways of coping, new ways of building thicker skin. And so that same thing applies to anything underneath that umbrella of culture, your norms, your beliefs, your values, the systems that drive those, the people that drive those, language and symbols. All those are cultural elements. And so, any of these broader concepts within cultural neuroscience and cultural psychology, specifically if we're talking about inclusion, specifically if we're talking about um, racial equity, whatever we're talking about under this massive umbrella that is culture, meaning the ways that we think, the ways we are, the ways we believe, the ways we behave, the ways we communicate, everything that is part of who we are, there's a capacity level. And some days it might not be as high as other days, and that's okay. It's really important that we don't sit in this place of shame or guilt and feel bad because maybe we made a mistake because of an internalized bias that we have and someone brought it to our attention and we say, wow, thank you. Thank you for pointing out one of my blind spots. Now I can move forward and I can accept that. And I can create a new narrative, a new mindset, a new programming in my brain, quite literally, with how I make decisions. So, why is this podcast named Cultural Capacity? In a nutshell, because we all have the capacity to continue expanding our cultural empathy and our cultural mindsets and our cultural intelligence levels on every day that we wake up. We all have that capacity. It's how do we choose to use it? How do we move within that continuum of how we might be feeling on any particular day? So be gentle and kind to yourself, be gentle and kind to others, and your journey is no one else's but yours. I wish you well on your journey. And I encourage you to reach out, share this with a friend if you find it inspirational or encouraging. Be sure to hit subscribe. And just thank you. Thank you so much for all the questions I know that are going to continue to come in. And we hope that you enjoyed this. It was great to meet you all and introduce a little bit about myself. I look forward to hopefully connecting with you someday. And please be advised, if you have an interest, feel free to leave us a voice message. Our team will get to it eventually. We are building our library of different voices that will be featured on the Cultural Capacity podcast. So if you have an idea for a topic that you'd love to talk about for 10 minutes or less, feel free to leave us a voice message and we'll be in touch with you in the future. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today and tuning in to this episode of the Cultural Capacity Podcast. We're glad you're here. If you found value in this episode, be sure to share out with your social networks. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review on Apple. You know, all the things. Finally, don't forget to take advantage of our free quarterly subscription that is in our podcast description. The link is right there. It's called Better Community, and we would love to have you join us there too. Until next time, take care.